Main message here. The title of our main message, our sermon message today, is Lambs Among Wolves. Lambs among wolves. I think it'll go very fitting with our sermonette that we just heard. If you have your Bibles or you'd like to listen along, let's turn to Luke chapter 10, and we're going to begin reading in verses 1 through 3. We'll continue in our Luke series. We may do that for the next one or two messages, and then we will, of course, turn our attention on to the upcoming fall holy days and our preparation for them. But for now, we'll continue here. And we come to Luke chapter 10. We're going to begin in verse 1. But as you turn there, let me just establish in our minds where we are in the narrative. You know, previously, in the previous chapter, chapter 9, Jesus had already sent out the 12. He then made his way to Jerusalem, and in doing so, he encountered a few more and invited them to follow him. And now, beginning in chapter 10, he now dispatches an additional 70 individuals here, sending them out in pairs to the surrounding areas to prepare the way for his coming, prepare men and women for his arrival. And so here we are, Luke 10. Let's read verses 1 through 3 here. Luke records, "After these things, the Lord appointed 70 others also, and sent them 2 by 2 before his face into every city and place where he himself was about to go. Then he said to them, 'The harvest truly is great, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into the harvest. Go your way, behold, I send you out as lambs among wolves.'" I'll stop there. Now, as we begin to think about and begin to set our minds upon this moment here, we ought not think that now with the expanded numbers here, that somehow or another was proportionate to the needs and the opportunities which they were about to face. Far from it. Because, again, you notice that he points out in verse 2, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are in fact disproportionate to the needs. So in other words, there were really just too few laborers, even sending out the 70. So consider that. And as we consider that fact, we should also not assume that the individuals must think of themselves as being particularly equipped for the task or particularly powerful in any way, because as he says, I am sending you out, verse 3, as lambs among wolves. So not only are they disproportionate to the need at hand, but they now are being sent out weak, very weak, in the face of a real danger here. But as the 70 considered this, I don't think they should have been too surprised. You know, many of these disciples would have understood the fact that they were really quite lacking, quite powerless, except for the enabling power that comes from Jesus Christ. Point in fact, just one chapter previous in chapter 9, we read there of the moment in which the sun is about to set. The shadows are beginning to cast long on the day, and we have the scene described where the disciples come to Jesus Christ and they say, you know, Jesus, in looking at the time of day and looking at these 5,000 men plus women and children, I really think we ought to send them all home so that they can get something to eat. Because it's really, in looking at all these people, it's really not realistic to think about feeding them. Well, but Jesus says, well, I have another idea. Why don't you, Jesus said, give them something to eat? To which they replied, we have nothing to give them except it's even a ridiculous thought to think about buying them something, which is a little bit of irony because Jesus had already told them earlier in the chapter they weren't to bring any means of or source of money of any kind. So there is a sense of irony there. But in other words, here are the 5,000 men plus women and children. So far, there's just this young lad who's brought 5 loaves, 2 fish. What do you think we can possibly do with that in meeting the vastness of the need? So that encounter had already happened. And Jesus, of course, took what was offered, blessed it, broke it, multiplied it, gave it to the disciples, and Luke records for us that all ate and were satisfied. All. So now we come to this particular picture here at the beginning of verse 10, and it's a picture of, once again, a phenomenal challenge being encountered by abject weakness. And it's the exact same scenario in which we see time and time again shown in Scripture where Jesus shows himself strong in the midst of weakness. And he provides the sufficiency in the face of lack of resources. So now Jesus sends this group out on a mission in the exact same way. This unnamed band of individuals, these disciples, being sent out with the task to introduce others to him, prepare the way for his arrival. This is what they were to do then, unprepared in many ways, not up to the job at hand, small in number. This is what they were to do then, and this is what we're to do today. You know, if you think about this and bring this to us today, we are given the task in the same way, the privilege to introduce others to Jesus Christ and God the Father, and to prepare the way now, not for his arrival, but for, in fact, his return. And so in the same way, Jesus is putting together a group for this purpose. So we see the connection here. And again, look at this picture. It's a very vulnerable picture. Verse 3 again, go, he says, verse 3, I'm sending you out as lambs among wolves. I was driving up to my house the other day, and we live in an area which we have the blessing of seeing many deer, you know, around the area. Inevitably, one will cross the road. I know you've experienced this, and you know, if you have any experience, that there's more to follow after the one that you see. But every so often you come across the dreadful scene where one has been hit by a car. Very sad circumstance. But it just brings to mind the fact that, of course, that which you're driving, that tonnage in which you're driving, is nothing, is not to be compared to the vulnerable lamb that may find himself coming across the road. The deer, of course, will come off far worse than any damage to the car. In the same way, these wolves that these lambs are being sent out in the midst of, these wolves destroy lambs. These wolves ravage lambs. These wolves eat lambs. And Jesus says, I'm sending you out. The number of you is vastly disproportionate to the vastness of the harvest. At the same time, I'm sending you out like lambs in the midst of wolves. So where does the prospect of victory lie? For these individuals, what are they to do? When they go out, what are they to do? Are they somehow supposed to learn how to howl? You know, is that the expectation? Are they somehow going to try to, supposed to create an impression that they're wolves themselves? Are they supposed to put forth that they're forceful when they're really fearful? No, no. Lambs are at their best being lambs. And Jesus says to his people here, I'm sending you out. You're not much of and by yourselves. He refers to them as a little flock. Later in Luke, for your notes, if you want to write this scripture down for your notes, Luke 12:32, Luke records Jesus saying, do not fear, little flock. Do not fear. It is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. You're my little lambs, in other words. And the reason not to be fearful, the antidote to your fearfulness, is the promise that I am going to be with you. I am the shepherd, and I'm going to be with you. I'm not shielding you from these things, as we heard in the sermonette, but I am with you through it. And I just want to pause for a moment. I want us to get this and to understand this is the story, if you will, of God working with his people. And he is working with a chosen people who, in their utter poverty, throughout the whole of history, in their inability to meet the forces which are arranged against them, they still find victory, being empowered by their God. They will find glory and triumph. And the story of the Bible is how God intervenes, brings victory on behalf of those who know themselves to be poor, vulnerable, defenseless, fearful creatures. These little lambs being sent out among wolves. This is the picture. And as you think about this picture here in Luke 10, we know, and I'm sure your mind goes to so many different examples in the Bible of this very principle. I want to just give you one. The fact that God does choose lambs to send out for his message, and he assures them he's with them. This picture is most clearly seen in one example that I want us to look at just for a moment in Exodus chapter 3. So if you'd like to keep your marker here in Luke 10, we'll come back. But if you'd like to turn to Exodus chapter 3 and verse 7, I want to just turn our focus just for a moment onto another little lamb, a little lamb by the name of Moses. Exodus 3 verse 7, it is the story of the little lamb here. God comes to this lamb, and he comes with the intention to liberate his people from the crushing hand of the Egyptian oppressors. God's people in total subjugation, no prospect to come out of their slavery, no prospect of victory. God determines to come down. He comes to a shepherd himself and reveals himself to Moses. Here it is. Speaks out of a bush, a burning bush that does not burn up. And look at this, Exodus 3, let's begin in verse 7. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the oppression of my people who are in Egypt, and I have heard their cry because of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. You know, there were many wolves in Egypt. Verse 8, so I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, to bring them up from the land to a good and large land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, and take them to all these various places here. Let's stop there. So the Lord comes to Moses, and you can imagine it's Moses at this point saying, well, that's terrific. I don't know why you're telling me this, though. Why did you come all this way to a desert to tell me this? He knew the Lord was talking to them. He could have looked behind his shoulder. There was no one there, just a field. Why have you sought me out with this wonderful news? Well, here's the hammer, verse 10, the hammer dropping. Verse 10, here it is. Come now, therefore, I will send you. We could say you, E-W-E, you little lamb. I will send you to Pharaoh that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. Verse 11, but Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and that I should bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? Let's stop there. Who am I? We feel that way, don't we? Today we're not tasked with physically bringing Israel out of Egypt, but we're tasked, of course, to bring men and women out of all that Egypt symbolized, the slavery. And we're tasked to bring them out, to give them the freedom to worship God in truth, in spirit and truth. That's our task. And just like the 70, we are preparing the world for the coming of Jesus Christ, for his arrival. We're the little lambs. Daunting task before us, overwhelming task before us. But what did we say was the promise to the little lambs? Where's our prospect of victory? Here it is, continuing here, verse 12, just the first part. Responding to Moses' fear, the first part of verse 12, he said, I will certainly be with you. That is the promise to the little lambs. Why did Moses doubt this giant in Scripture? Why did he doubt? Well, he knew Pharaoh was a strong lamb-eating wolf. And he knew himself to be timid and fearful. And he knew himself to be an unqualified to the task lamb. But what's the key? The key is not an exceptional man or woman. The key is an exceptional message. The key is not an exceptional messenger. The key is an exceptional God. That's where the key lies. And you see this throughout all the Bible. And you might even think, well, of course, of the ultimate picture of a lamb being sent to the wolves. What's the ultimate picture? Well, it's revealed in the story of Jesus Christ himself. God the Father determined he was going to send one to free the world from slavery and from sin and from death, to free the world from the great wolf, if you will, Satan the devil. And the Father determined to send the Son. And where does he send him? To some nondescript place, Bethlehem, on the backside of humanity, to a no-name individual, Mary, in total obscurity, steps onto the stage of human history as the Lamb of God. And within a short period of time, though, the wolves come. That lamb is killed. He hangs from a stake. Those looking on would have said this is a pathetic, weak picture. What could ever come from that slain lamb? I mean, if you're going to send a king, you wouldn't send him to a cross. If you're going to send a conqueror, you'd send him in on a chariot. Surely he would show himself strong. Well, they thought they had finished the lamb, and they thought they had finished the Lamb of God. However, within a short period of time, the ladies hurry to the tomb. They find only grave clothes. He is risen. He now sits on at the right hand of God, waiting to come to judge the living and the dead. And in the meantime, what is he doing? He is putting together the people. He's gathering together some lambs. And what do we look like? Look around. In many ways, we're insignificant, and we're small, and we're fearful. And in many ways, we are not up to the task at hand. In many ways, and for many reasons, you wouldn't put together this group of individuals here that are sitting here or listening in online. You know, we couldn't actually conceive such a strange group of individuals grouping together, you know, to accomplish the very preparing for the coming of Jesus Christ. What do we look like in the face of London, Kentucky here? Do we look strong and mighty? Let me ask personally, were you up for the task this morning? Or as the sermonette asked, have you been weighed down this morning? Do you feel weighed down? Do you feel like things are so heavily against you? Perfect. Perfect. Why perfect? God is not looking for exceptional people, you know, that which society deems as exceptional. He's looking for humble, meek, unpretentious, submissive lambs to carry out his message. We sing it week in, week out. Not many wise men now are called, not many noble brethren, not many mighty chosen ones, for you see your calling. Sons of God, you are called not because of greatness, not because of greatness. You know, where are the names of these 70? We could ask that there in Luke 10. If you'd like to turn back to Luke 10, before we forget we're studying Luke 10. Where are the names of the 70? Well, they're recorded in God's book, the book of life. They're not recorded here. Who knows the name of these 70 individuals? Who cares? Well, God cares. He cares deeply. He knows and he cares. And make no doubt, God knows the names of his little lambs. Every single one of them. And with too few, and with the big challenge, he says, I want you to cry out to the Lord of harvest. There again, at the end of verse 2, Luke 10, at the end of verse 2. Therefore, pray, he says, pray that the Lord of harvest would send out laborers into the harvest. This is your prayer. This is to be my prayer. Ask God to send out laborers to the harvest. If you're praying this on a daily basis, just know on the strength of Scripture, you are the answer to that prayer. You are the answer to your own prayer. I wonder if you know that. I know many of you pray for the circumstances, that God would line up the circumstances to be such, put people, individuals in my pathway so that I might be a lamb who is going out to prepare for your return. Put people in my path. Let me be that instrument, that lamb to which I can prepare for the great shepherd to come. You are the answer to this prayer. And God has invested unique talents. He's placed you where he wants you to be to prepare for the coming of his great lamb. And so Jesus continues here in this passage, and very helpfully, he gives and lays out certain instructions to his lambs as he's sending them out. And he says, and continuing in the passage here, let me, little lambs, give you the instructions for your journey. So we want to essentially look at these instructions in the time we have left. They're very practical, very helpful to us, I believe, as you think about your going out to prepare the way for the great shepherd to come. And I'll just mention 4 instructions to you that I believe you can glean from these traveling out. These are traveling instructions, if you will. The first instruction, I believe, given to us is revealed in verse 4. The first instruction given to the lambs as you are going out to prepare the world for the coming of Jesus Christ. Number 1 instruction is travel light. I think we could summarize this. Travel light. Luke 10, verse 4. Carry neither money bag, knapsack, nor sandals. Let's stop there. In other words, I think we could summarize this as travel light. Do not take a money bag. Do not take a knapsack. Do not take sandals. These are all physical provisions, aren't they? And of course, we can look at this physically, but also we could look at this as priority, right? I don't think that only physical is being spoken to here. I think there's a greater concept. But if you think about these directions to the lambs, I think we could say, make sure you're traveling with not only physical treasures, and make sure you're traveling with the heavenly treasures, first and foremost. Heavenly treasures as your priority. You don't want to be depending on how much coin you have in your pocket. You don't want to be depending on what you have in the knapsack there. You don't want to be depending on how much life you have left in your sandals. Your priority should be heavenly treasures. I think we see this principle in Matthew's gospel. If you'd like to keep your marker here, let's turn over to Matthew 6, verse 19 and 21. If you'd like to turn there for a moment. Matthew 6, verses 19 through 21. As we think about traveling light and where our treasure should be as we are going out as God's lambs. Here it is. Matthew 6 lays this out for us very clearly. Matthew 6, verses 19 through 21. Do not, Matthew records, do not lay up for yourself treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. Verse 20. But lay up for yourselves treasure in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Let's stop there. I find this challenging. I find traveling light challenging. I wonder if you do too. You know, when I take an honest look at my life, and I hope you will too today, think about how much of our time, effort, mind, body, soul, if you will, think about how much of it is focused on the treasure that I'm laying up here on earth. Man, if you do an honest assessment, almost all of it, unfortunately, my priority is what I have in my money bag. You know, my priority is what I have in, quote, my knapsack, if you will. My priority is where I need to go in these sandals on this earth and physical considerations. But all those physical treasures are temporary. And in fact, they are a treasure that a moth and rust will creep in and destroy. Ultimately, it's not the treasure for eternity. So think about what you might be encumbering yourself with, weighing you down, essentially making you less effective for the real task at hand. Do you need to make some difficult decisions today physically to help you go out traveling light physically so that you can do the work that is before us. As we turn back to Luke 22, verse 35. I just want to show you this. Luke 22, verse 35, as you think about perhaps relieving yourself of some of these physical earthly treasures to focus on the treasure of heaven. Luke 22, at the end of the Lamb's journeys, if you will, Luke 22, verse 35, Jesus says to his little lambs, he said to them, Luke 22, verse 35, when I sent you without a money bag, knapsack, and sandals, did you lack anything? So they said, nothing. Nothing. I got to tell you, and I know it speaks true to many of your testimonies. When you put God first at the expense of earthly treasures, every time God takes care of you. Every time. And ultimately, when you look back on those moments and Jesus asked you, when I sent you out without these things, did you lack anything? And the answer inevitably and always is nothing. The countless sacrifices that each of us have had to make were met with God taking care of us each and every time, and sometimes pouring blessings upon us out of his grace that we couldn't even measure. So the instruction's clear, I believe. Can you trust me? Will you trust me? Will you go out in obedience? Will you believe that I will provide everything you require? It's imperative we travel light. Put our priority on the real treasure. So that's the first bit of instruction. Turning back to Luke chapter 10. Luke chapter 10. We find a second bit of instruction. We're going through these 4 instructions fairly fast here. I'll give it to you to spend more time in pondering later. Here's the second piece of instruction, I believe, for the lambs being sent out. It's an extension of the first, but number 2 is stay focused. So if number 1 is travel light, number 2 is stay focused. And I think we find that in the second part of verse 4, where the instruction is, and greet no one along the road. Perhaps we could attach to this, stay focused. Now, every so often, I get the question, and I get these phone calls, sometimes from people I don't even know, where they say, do you interpret the Bible literally? And I say, yes, we interpret the Bible literally. And perhaps some of those individuals would then point me to Luke 10 here, verse 4, and say, well, then, if I'm passing you on the road, I don't expect you to greet me, you know. I do get these phone calls from time to time. And I say, yes, we do interpret the Bible literally, but of course, within context. We would be silly to not, of course, study the Bible in context. And Jesus, of course, I believe is conveying in a phrase that there is no wasting of time. We are lambs being sent out to prepare for the arrival, in our case, the return of Jesus Christ. Stay focused. Feel upon you a pressing urgency, single-mindedness. That may mean comfort and leisure take a back seat. The urgency of the mission upon the lambs, they're willing, point 1, to forego earthly treasures if need be. And number 2, they're going to stay focused to the task. We won't turn there, but for your notes, if you'd like to write this down and look at this story later, we won't take the time to turn there. But this story is found in 2 Kings 4, verse 29. 2 Kings 4, verse 29. The story of the Shunammite son being restored back to life. The Shunammite comes to Elisha. She lets him know her son is in dreadful circumstances. Elisha dispatches Gehazi. Elisha says to Gehazi, tuck your cloak into your belt, take my staff in your hand, and run And if you meet anyone, do not greet them. And if anyone greets you, do not answer them. That was the instruction from Elisha to the lamb Gehazi at that time. You're on a mission. There's going to be other times for greetings. Take care of the business at hand. Single-mindedness. These are your traveling instructions. So you may have at certain times with this as your priority, have to stay focused and to forego certain physical leisure, certain physical enjoyment, and certain greetings for the task at hand. Number 3. Okay, so travel light, stay focused. Number 3, speak peace. This is an interesting one. So number 3, little lambs, in your traveling instructions. Third is speak peace. I believe we find this in Luke 10, verses 5 and 6. So continuing here in Luke 10. Luke 10, verse 5 and 6. But whatever house you enter, first say, peace to this house. And if a son of peace is there, your peace will rest on it. If not, it will return to you. Let's stop there. So you ever wonder what this means? Speak peace. Is this simply Jesus saying, I want you to give the typical greeting? Shalom, when you go into a house, speak shalom. If a shalom is given back to you, well, then go through all this that follows. If they do not say shalom back, then it won't be there. There won't be a son of peace there. Well, I don't think this is typically or just only what Jesus is speaking about here, because you'll notice there's sort of an objective dimension to this peace. Verse 6 again, this peace, once offered, will rest upon this house if a man of peace is there. If it does not rest and he rejects it, it will be returned to you. So this peace is like a commodity. This is the peace, if you will, of a gift. All right. So when we as little lambs are going out to prepare for the return, for the coming of Jesus Christ, we have peace to offer, and it's either rejected or received like a gift. So again, context and putting scripture to scripture together. We remember back in chapter 2, if you want to turn there for a moment, speaking of this peace as a commodity or as a gift, back in chapter 2, verse 14, just after Jesus is born, what is the word of the angels? Well, Luke 2, verse 14, just after Jesus is born, the word of the angels is, Luke 2, verse 14, glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men. So Jesus now is born, glory to God in the highest, and on earth now peace, goodwill toward men. Jesus is the peace from God. Jesus is the peace toward and upon men and women. So lambs, when you come into these homes and the homeowner does not want to receive this gift of peace, the homeowner does not want to receive Jesus Christ, then that offer of peace will be given back to you. It'll return to you. But if your offer of peace comes to the man who accepts it, if there is a son of peace in this household, they will recognize the kingdom is near. And they will recognize Jesus is the king. And you now will see them receive this peace, and you will know that you're in the household of a son of peace, a child of the kingdom, that has now responded to this gift. The gift will come and rest in that house and upon that son of peace. Again, verse 5 and 6. Verse 5 and 6, but whatever house, Luke 10, verse 5 and 6, but whatever house you enter, first say peace to this house. And if a son of peace is there, your peace will rest on it. If not, it'll be returned to you. So as you go out, this is what we're doing as lambs. We are offering Jesus Christ as a gift. We don't know to whom God is calling. We don't know to whom God is working with, a son or a daughter of peace in that household. We will know if they receive it once we speak it in the household. And upon those households that receive it, verse 7 and 8, verse 7 and 8 follow. Then he says, little lambs remain in that same house, verse 7, eating and drinking such things as they give. For the laborer is worthy of his wages. Do not go from house to house, merely, we could say. Verse 8, whatever city you enter and they receive you, eat such things as are set before you. Let's stop there. So in other words, when you come to a home, lamb, you're going out, God is placing you and people in front of you. Speak peace. If you come to individuals who accept that peace, spend time there. Spend time with those individuals. Eat with them. This is where you need to be. Be content in that household. You're traveling light, remember? You're not putting comfort as your priority. Accept the food that is given to you in that household where there's a son or daughter of peace. And you will be edified, and you will be able to be edified. Spend your time there. Remember to stay focused. Remember, if the peace is returned to you, well, keep going. Remember, there's an urgency to this. But if you come to a household where the peace is received, eat with them. Be content to be there for a while. So you see, this is the objective. We're staying focused on these things. We are moving house to house. If we come across a son of peace or a daughter of peace, we are not just to keep going house to house. We want to spend time with those individuals, more time with them. So travel light, stay focused, speak peace. Fourth and final is found in verse 9. And heal the sick in that house, in that home, and say to them, the kingdom of God has come near to you. So number 4 is heal and speak of the coming kingdom of God. So that's number 4. So if you speak peace, they receive it. Eat with them, stay with them. Verse 9, heal the sick there and speak of the coming kingdom of God. So this 4th bit of instruction, healing and speaking of the kingdom. This is our pattern. It's a pattern that Jesus has already set for us. If you want to stay here in Luke and Luke 10 and keep your marker here, if you want to turn back to chapter 4, verses 40 through 44, we may remember this part of our study. Luke 4, verse 40 through 44, Jesus already set this pattern of healing and speaking of the coming kingdom of God. We see that in these passages here. Chapter 4, verse 40 through 44. Speaking of Jesus, when the sun was setting, all those who had any that were sick with various diseases brought them to him, to Jesus, laid his hands on every one of them and healed them. And demons also came out of many, crying and saying, "You are the Christ, the Son of God." And he, rebuking them, did not allow them to speak, for they knew that he was the Christ. So healing. Verse 42. Now, when it was day, he departed and went out to a deserted place, and the crowd sought him and came to him and tried to keep him from leaving. But he said to them, "I must preach the kingdom of God in other cities also, because for this purpose I've been sent." And he was preaching in the synagogues of Galilee. So stop there. So healing and preaching of the kingdom of God. This is our pattern. And I believe this is the fourth bit of instruction to the lambs being sent out. Likewise, today we do the exact same thing. We are expected to do the exact same thing. God still does heal. We, of course, know in the pattern of the Bible, physical healing, we are to call upon the elders. But I'll tell you today that every single one of us here has the responsibility of healing men and women spiritually, those to whom we have influence with. We can participate in the bringing of spiritual healing to these men and women that we come encounter with as we're being sent out. Christ opened the door for spiritual healing. Spiritual healing available to all. Spiritual healing available to those who accept the gift of peace. One day it'll be spiritual healing for all. All will have that opportunity. And back in Luke 10, verse 11, if we encounter, we as lambs being sent out, Luke 10, verse 11, if we encounter those who give us the peace back that reject Jesus Christ, don't be discouraged. Chapter 10, verse 11, the very dust of your city, which clings to us, we wipe off against you. Nevertheless, know this, that the kingdom of God has come near. In other words, regardless if the peace you offer, regardless if it's rejected, the kingdom of God is coming. It is near. Wipe the dust off in those homes. Move on. The wolves will not prevent the reality of the kingdom coming. The kingdom is near. It's near in the message that the lambs are bringing. Well, there you have it. There you have it. The traveling instructions for the little lambs. I hope you ponder on these verses, and I hope that tonight you will say a particular prayer. I hope you will recognize and acknowledge you are one of these lambs being sent out. You have the responsibility to follow these 4 sets of instructions. It's an incredible responsibility. And God and Jesus Christ, God the Father through Jesus Christ wants us to go forward, commit to this mission. Let's go. Go out ahead. Jesus Christ is coming, and we need to prepare the way. And Jesus Christ will be with us. Of course, Jesus Christ says to all of his little lambs, go, prepare the way, and just know I will be with you always.